Hey, great. Good evening. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly, Rashid.
Yeah, how you doing? How's your side?
I'm all good.
It's
I'm all
nice.
good.
It's nice having you this evening, and you can see from the live stream, people are already waiting for us to start. And before we proceed, we like to apologize for starting late. It's due to some technical glitches that are beyond our control, basically. So, thank you so much for waiting to be part of the show, and I'm very happy we have Direct now. Means is here to talk about everything that needs to do with devs in DevOps and ops in DevOps. Basically, we know DevOps is development and operation coming together, trying to bridge the gap. As mentioned in our last show by Manasseh, he tried to define it for us to let us understand the basic concepts. That's why Biret is here this evening to tell us more and guide us as we kickstart our journey and to improve it for those of us that we have been doing that in our company in the past. So, can you say hello to everybody, basically?
Hi everyone. So I'm Jared Nandomnan, a Rust engineer at Luminovo in Munich, Germany. So hey everyone.
Yeah, that's a very brief introduction, and I guess you tell us more when we proceed on the show, basically. So it's nice hearing your voice, very cool, calm, and when like the bass is a bit cool. All right, thank you for that. So I guess you can kickstart the show. We'd like to know a bit about your background. Like, how did you get started? Did you started as a web developer? You started as and you can. We don't even know how you started basically. So we want to hear that from you. Yeah.
Okay, I think my story is mostly from university. I'd say at first I was watching a friend of mine, like a senior friend of mine who was in the 500 level at the time, and he was like just doing this really strange things with his computer. And essentially, he was trying to write his final year project, and he was making this really cool project that involved, embedded systems. He had a bit of web. He was using PHP and different things. So I just sort of like picked it up from there, and like I just liaised with him, and we started talking more, and he was showing me a couple things. So from there, I picked interest, and then later on, um, I started speaking with Manasseh and Wisdom who are in my department. Like we all we're all in the same department, and from there I discovered that these guys also had like passion. So it was like our own like little tiny community, more or less. We built stuff together, and from there I'd say the rest is history. So yeah, to answer your question, it was mostly C++ in the beginning, and then later on when I like sort of restarted with Manasseh and Wisdom, it was like a touch of PHP, SQL, um, HTML and Bootstrap, if anyone still remembers Bootstrap. So yeah.
Wow, that's nice. It's good to hear that you started as a web developer, basically, like doing HTML things, CSS, and Bootstrap, everything, and going to C++ and C. It's a good one to know that from you. So can you tell us a bit about where you work right now and how you get there, basically?
Okay, so like I said, I work for Luminovo, GmbH. Luminovo is a software firm in the electronics industry based here in Munich, but it's mostly a remote company, meaning we have like people working from almost every continent at this point. Um, I was working for Luminovo from Nigeria, but you know, now I'm also based in Munich, just generally closer to the office. Um, So it's essentially funny story, or more or less like along the lines of DevOps. What Luminovo is trying to accomplish is essentially a sort of like streamlining ops process for electronics management. So essentially, we think of ourselves as like the DevOps of like the electronics industry. So like how you streamline your process from like you're an electronics manufacturer, You want to upload a bomb. You want to be able to get quotations. You want to know how much it's going to cost you even before you've done any sort of manufacturing. So that whole procedure, that like ops heavy part of electronics is where Lumino comes in. So yeah,
Oh, that's cool. Like it's good to know what the team at Luminovo are doing and being part of the team. It's good to hear that from you.
yeah.
I guess we know a bit about you. But then while you are introducing yourself, you forgot to tell us the passion behind your being in tech, going into ROS development, doing backend stuff, thinking about DevOps. There should be something that is pushing you to do it, basically. So we want to
Uh,
hear that from you, basically. Yeah.
I think for me, like I said, like my first intro to it was like a friend of mine who I saw doing like really cool stuff. So I guess from like the jump, I've always liked automation. Like I like looking at stuff and it's like this thing is working automatically, but it didn't magically happen. Someone created it like um it wasn't there from the beginning, but then someone made up this whole automated process from end to end. And for me, that was like my friend Yokuna, who was doing his final year project. So even then, like you then start to see websites, you know, servers, a lot of things as like automation in general. And so everything just starts like pieced together. It's like, okay, yeah, like this makes a lot of sense. This is what I should be doing. I enjoy taking like humans out of the process, essentially, if possible. Like let everything just be automated.
Wow, wow, that's nice. I guess that's one of the things that a DevOps engineer will be thinking of basically. If a DevOps engineer, you do DevOps things, your thinking should be how can I automate all these manual processes that is going on in the organization. Yeah, that's a good passion from Dretna basically. So let's get into the business of the day. What we have been telling people is that okay, just come and hear what devs in DevOps mean. Come and hear what ops in DevOps means, basically. And I can see
Yeah.
from our audience, they are very excited to hear that. So to start with, what can you how can you define DevOps basically according to your own definition? Like, okay, what is DevOps?
I'm not going to ramble into some sort of like uh official definition, right? But for me, I'd say so the content or the brunt of the work for most software, most hardware is actually application code, right? How do I get this thing working? Um, the code I write to make sure this feature works. Like that's what application code simply would be. But then the if application code was the only thing we had to write, like that would be like an ideal world. You just write application code and it's going to work for everybody everywhere. As in, it works on my system, it's going to work on your system, I hope. But that's where like ops comes in because we know like that's not always the case. The thing is, there's processes surrounding how you deliver your software into its final environments, whether its final environments is, as an app on your phone or as a web app on the server, whatever your final environment is, like there's always process surrounding all of this. So the ability to be able to take the burden away from um most developers so that they can focus on like application code while thinking about like sort of the architecture of how like the grand scheme of how it would work, the how, more or less the technicality of the content, but more of like how it would work. So yeah, that's what I would describe. Sorry, you're on mute, Rashid.
Sorry about that. So I was saying it's a bit of a very concise, very straightforward explanation of what DevOps is all about, basically. So yeah, now that we know, we have a bit of background of what DevOps means from your own point of view. And you
Mhm.
mentioned the fact that okay, the application code is being written by the developers basically. So what are the parts? Okay, let me start this way. We know that the application code that the developer are writing, the product itself, which is meant to be available to the customers and for the customer to use and um, become a sort of business for the organization basically. So we know the role of a developer basically in that regard. So the question will now be, what are the other values that a developers need to put in place to build a kind of a viable and a very accurate, let me just stop on the word viable, to build a viable product for the community or for the company they are working for. I don't know, maybe that question is straightforward enough or I need to retake it.
So, what are the things a developer has to consider to build a viable application for like their company?
Exactly.
Um, so yeah, like I guess there's different considerations at that point. It depends on who you are talking to. If you are talking to somebody who is in business in the company, they will tell you, okay, for instance, we want numbers, we want bottom line to grow as quickly as possible for one. Um, if you are talking to, developers, developers would maybe be focused on more on like the operations side of things, like how this thing works. Does it work as it's intended to? Could we ship with it with like as little bugs as possible? All these questions are like things a developer would want to answer. But I'd say for me, if you're a developer in a company and you are thinking about you know about your company's code or your company's final finished product, like one of the things you'd like to consider is you have to put your best foot forward as a developer, right? But you would always have to make concessions, and that's just the hard truth. You would have to make concessions with um the non-technical people within the company. Meaning, as a developer, like you can't just jump in head first. Like developers, we a lot of times want to learn new stuff, wants to engineer things properly. Like they're like, okay, I want this to work. I want it to work as good as possible, even on like the first try. And that's like an honorable goal. But the truth is, a lot of times things don't have to work so perfectly, or so like, or you don't have to over engineer things to begin with for you to have like a solid base to go off of. That's not to say like write, spaghetti code or rubbish code in the beginning, right? That's to say like there's probably like a baseline of, concession where you can say this agrees with I'm not wasting too much time doing this, and at the same time I'm still doing good engineering and the company's still making money off of it. So yeah.
All right. Okay. I think that's a bit of answer to that. Like, okay, what's developers out there? People that are watching us, if you're a developer, these are tips that you need to think of while you are developing your application. You need to put in mind to build a very viable and sustainable code while you are writing the code, not just to write code for okay. You not be a kind of developer that say, okay, it work, don't touch it. So far, it is working, so, or you be that kind of developer that don't even know the reason why it's working. Shall know the code is running and is getting the output that is expecting, but then you do not have that reason why that code is working the way it works. So the problem will be okay, write the test for the code you put up. The problem will now be how will I test this code? The code that I don't know how it
Mm.
works. So while you're writing your program, or if your intention is to build a viable and sustainable products, you have to put in mind, write a good code, is maintainable, a very clean code, and all of that. So that's what we are advocating for here. So my next question will be, okay, now we know that we should write. The developer knows they should write a very clean code, to be precise, basically. So the question will be, as a DevOps engineer, what are the codes that you need to write? Because we believe that the code that a DevOps engineer writes is what we call the dev part of its work. Okay, so the question is a bit of summary of the development part of DevOps, basically. Okay, for you to be a DevOps, you need to write a set of code. While maintaining the code, we can categorize that to be a kind of writing codes too. So, and we can categorize that to be development part of your process. So the question now is, okay, what are those things that a DevOps engineer needs to write those code to, for us to be able to call him a complete DevOps, because he writes code, and we call him a developer, and he maintain the code. We'll get to that side when we talk of the operation part of DevOps basically. I don't know, maybe that question is straightforward or I need to repeat it.
And I think I have some semblance of what you mean. So I'd say again, this also depends on maybe for one, the size of the company. The size of the company would dictate some things. The size of also your market, for instance, like how huge is your market? Are you serving 1,000 requests per second versus 100,000 per second? I think that would also, so that's one of the things like companies will test for system design, like when you're interviewing with them, like can you think on terms like that? So I'd say some of the things a DevOps engineer would probably work with on like a day-to-day basis. One, again, systems design is like quite important. So you may find yourself, drawing up architecture for different parts of the application here and there. So probably getting just familiar with like representation. Um, and on the other side, again, depending on how large your product is or how large your company is, it might be that okay, the first thing you start with, even okay, thing is even developers do DevOps in the beginning, at least for like their own small applications, for instance, right? You have a small application, you're writing like personal projects, you want to deploy it for everyone else to be able to use. You have to also do the ops part of that. You get me? So for that, for you to be able to think about that, you just your application at that point is small. You don't have like a huge final market. So you can start with like something basic, for instance. At that point, maybe Heroku used to be like really viable until until Heroku started charging money. But yeah, like something like Heroku, for instance, and then you have your code hosted on GitHub. You're like, okay, how do I tie this end to end? How do I make sure I'm not shipping bugs into production? Okay, I'm setting up automated tests. So that's where you start hearing things like CI/CD. Um, I think we gave a talk on Manasseh like years ago on like CI/CD. Probably link to it like later on, but yeah, like CI/CD is like one of the really intricate things, at least for DevOps engineers that work really close to the code. So yeah, like, and as your application scales, then you also have to start thinking of that as well. Okay, now we're hitting some sort of benchmark, or our database calls aren't performing as good as they should. Um, there's several points where DevOps engineers have to come in, but what they would typically write is, like I said, architecture, CI/CD. You would also write probably code to deploy infrastructure. Again, this depends if you are deploying your own infrastructure. Like if you're just making use of like finished products like I don't know, App Engine or something, you probably wouldn't have as much in the way of like writing code for infrastructure. But then again, you might also have to interact with like having to spin up your own cloud resources. So Terraform, TerraGrunt, and the likes. Um, so yeah, there's a like plethora of things that you probably would work with. And then if you get, into more, I'd say adjunct fields of DevOps like SRE and the likes, then you start to interact with more. I think you start to interact with way more HCL than you would like regular code. But yeah, today is mostly about like just DevOps. So yeah.
Okay, I think that's a breakdown of what you need to do as a DevOps, the code that you need to write. Talk about the IAC part, writing the infrastructure as code to provision infrastructures for your system or your application, basically, and a bit of other things that you need to do as a DevOps, which include which we can categorize under development. Is a bit of code that you need to write basically. That's why I mentioned about Terraform and the likes, which are tools basically to yeah. I cut. Can you hear me now? I was cut off at that point. I'm with my low spots. Hello, can you hear me now? Direct.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you now. Are you back in?
Yeah, I guess I'm back. Can you hear me now? Don't worry,
Yeah.
time chain is doing me anyhow. Sorry about that. I will soon get my
Yes.
Starlink so that I will not be cutting off anyhow. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so I guess we can pick a question from the chat now before we continue, basically. So there's a question in the chat, and the person is asking, what would be your advice to those who are just starting or trading similar career paths? I guess we have this question in our question along the way, but if you want to take it now, yeah, definitely you can go ahead.
Okay. So, similar career path. I don't know if my own career path was like really straightforward. Because truth is, even like at some point, I was like really heavily into AI and AI engineering. I have people like Hacksaw that can testify to that. But I'd say, I guess one thing I've learned is maybe to look to those who are like ahead of you in terms of like farther along in years, experience. They tend to shorten your journey um because they've also made some mistakes you could probably learn from and would be able to point you to like the right path to take. So currently I write Rust like day to day for my career. But I'd say it was my mentor who like pointed me out, Victor uh Victor Yola pointed me out that okay, like there's this up and coming language, it's really good, memory safe. He really spoke a lot about memory safety and he was like super into it and he was like, you have to learn it. And then I'm like thinking, I have like Python, I have Golang, like would I really need this extra language? But I went ahead to learn it and now it's something I actually love working with. Teaches you a lot, it brings you like closer to the method. Um so yeah, I'd say probably speak to people who have gone before you and like just generally ask for advice because that can be the difference between taking um 10 years versus 5 years.
Yeah, basically it's like borrowing the idea of somebody that what takes somebody to figure out in 5 years, if you go to the person you can get it in just not even up to a day, in an hour the person will be able to guide you, do this, do that, and you'll be able to move on the career in your career process basically. Yeah, I guess we'll take other question in the chat as we move ahead, but then let's move on to the other part. We've talked about the dev parts, like okay, the code that a DevOps needs to write, what is expected from a DevOps engineer, basically. So let's talk about the operation parts. Why do you think operation really matters in business and in organization, basically?
So I think from a business perspective, and again, don't quote my word for it because I'm not a business person, but yeah, from a business perspective, I definitely don't want to be paying my engineers for a lot of hours for things that could potentially be automated. For instance, if let's say I have an engineer I'm paying, you know, $50 an hour, right? So let's assume that's like his pay. And he potentially spends a lot of that time doing things, trivial things that could have, you know, been spent doing something else, then that's certainly like undercutting the business. So I'd say for that, that's, when thinking about engineering as is one of the reasons why business people are, you know, super into DevOps, or like think of DevOps that way, because they're like, okay, would we rather every developer deploys the application, which is just like, trust me, it's chaos. Everybody being able to just go and, do what they want, and maybe, just deploy into like production, for instance, like straight from their laptop. No checks along the way. It's just free ride. It's hellish. Um, so from that perspective, I'd say, and also repeatability is another thing. You want it to be that this is a repeatable process. That okay, if I'm done developing the application, I'm done writing the application code. If I push it in 10 to 20 minutes max, I have some build process, I have some, test, I have everything in place that ensures me that okay, this code is actually reliable, this code is ready to go into production. Everything works fine. Probably also spin up some staging environment for me along the way, and really cool stuff you could do as well. Then yeah, that starts to lighten the load. The developers now start to just think in terms of, oh, application. Like the ops part is taken away from them, and you can focus on like implementation and how to just, get this thing to work. This thing you're being paid for to write. Just get it to work. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's very brief and straightforward answer to that, and we can see that okay, the reason why the ops are there, and how DevOps philosophy can be implemented and be able to improve that process. Basically, that's a brief summary on that. But then, do you think the absence of operation management team have anything to do or have any bad side for the company, basically?
Again, that depends on the scale of the company. I'm saying that depends a lot because the truth is, a lot of things are not like straightforward. Like if I'm working for a 10-man company versus a 60-man, a 100-man company, like these things are going to vary across the board. So don't just take my word for it. Um, so depending on how the size of the company is, in the beginning, if it's really small, I don't think it's that worthwhile to invest. I mean, you always want to start on a good foot, but I don't think it's that worthwhile to invest like an entire budget on a DevOps team, like a dedicated DevOps team, for instance. If you have someone who has a bit of, ops savviness, that person could certainly be your ops person, who could just bootstrap like a couple things to begin with. And then depending on how the company grows and scales, then you can then say, okay, yeah, it seems like we need more ops people, or it seems we need dedicated SREs now in our team. So yeah, I wouldn't say directly that it has like an adverse effect, but I'd say every company should definitely know to watch out and see that okay, we're not at the point where everything is chaos, and like we definitely need an ops team. Like you have to be able to see ahead and say, okay, fine, we're getting to that point, so let's get like this dedicated team of people who can do this.
Yeah, yeah, that's very important. The company needs to look into that, not just neglect that part of the fact that the ops team are very important and they have their roles to play, and there are many things that can go wrong if the operations teams are not the way they're supposed to be, basically. So I would like to take some of the questions, like related questions to what we have in the chat, before we take the question in the chat directly. Now, we are, our audience are listening, and they were like, okay, it's like I like what I'm hearing, and I would like to venture into this. Basically, it's more or less, it's very close to the question you answered the other time, basically, but then in another angle. That okay, I'm now interested in learning or interested in going into it, and you've mentioned that I need to go and see somebody that have the experience in that field, the person that have passed through the process, so that I can be able to gain from or just drink from just drink from the river of his knowledge, basically. So the question now is, we've seen you and we know that you are we can trust you basically on that. So we want to ask you if you want to recommend anything for us. Okay, which where will you tell us to start basically? Let's say we are now resolving, we are making a resolution that okay, I'm starting a DevOps career and I'm meeting the right now that okay, I want to learn DevOps. So what are those things that you will tell us? That's one thing we want to hear. So yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I said, from my career was not straightforward. But some of the things I probably picked up along the way. I'd say for one, if you're angling towards the SRE field or anything along that line, um, for one, you have to be someone who is, at least to begin with, at the starting stage, you'd see maybe sysadmin work. And what sysadmin work generally means is people who like for instance working on your terminal. Even if you're working on Windows, you are comfortable with like command prompts. You know the ins and outs of like the operating system. So yeah, operating system for one is like quite key because at a high level, a lot of what most of these tools are doing is just interacting with like the APIs the operating system gives us. So like operating systems knowledge is key. Um, and also I've seen people who want to venture into like DevOps purely and don't want to have to touch like application code or have like any knowledge of application code. And I'm not sure if that's completely feasible. Like I don't know if I'm if I'm wrong, definitely like raise it up in chat. But I'm not sure if that's completely feasible for you to be able to do ops. You have to know the dev you are doing ops for. So to some extent, for instance, you can't bootstrap the architecture for a web application when you are not familiar with like web technology. Do you understand? Someone is writing their stuff in Java, or writing their thing in Golang or whatever it is, and you feel you could just come in at the point of just purely writing the ops for it. You have to at some point interact with some entry points into the application code. So I'd say knowing to some extent, you can't generally escape application code because you're still a developer, like you're a DevOps engineer, but like there's still that dev there. So even though you're doing ops, you're writing IAC most of the time and things like that. Or you're writing Kubernetes controllers, whatever it is you're writing most of the time, you can't generally escape you know, the dev side. So I say don't shy away from that. If you're the kind of person who likes to automate stuff, you're the kind of person who likes underlying knowledge on how things work, then yeah, this is certainly the path for you. If you also don't like CSS like I do, then this is probably the path for you. And yeah, I'd say if you're more of you like being in the shadows, you like moving things at the background, then yeah. So in summary, operating systems for me, also learning how to code, just general development. And yeah, I think every other thing is more field specific because there's more things you'd have to learn if you're going to be a cloud engineer, if you're going to be a reliability engineer. So yeah, but these are like the basic things to start with.
All right. Yes, that's a summary of what you need to put in place and what you need to think of. So I would like to wrap up my own question before taking question in the chat because we have some question there. So I would like to ask a combination of question, and it's a combination of community and internship for DevOps and junior DevOps role. Are those things existing? Do we have those things in existence? And how can we be part of them? How can I get an internship as a junior, a person that just learn? Probably I just finished learning bash scripting. I just learn Linux commands. I don't have much experience in DevOps. Is there anything or any community I can join? Is there any internship I can join on? Is there any other junior developer role I can run after? So what's your take on that basically?
So the truth is, for most of the most of the roles I see, um, I rarely ever explicitly see like junior DevOps engineers. Like I want to, this is like explicitly a junior DevOps engineer role because the truth is for smaller companies, they most of the time don't want to invest as much in like just a DevOps engineer, right? So the way this would work if you wanted a path in DevOps, like I said, especially maybe you're starting from Nigeria, I think um maybe European countries have depends on the country on the company have like a different take on that and like you're able to explicitly see entry roles for DevOps. But otherwise, if it's Nigeria that me I'm used to, like I know you probably have to get in with some tech skill, like you are a back-end engineer or a front-end engineer, you use it. So for that, you can easily see entry roles. I say easily in quotes, yeah. You can easily see entry roles. Um, and from there, you tend to notice the things that are lacking in like in the company's process. And it's up to you as somebody who is automations oriented to say, okay, fine, I want to take up this task. I want to clean up this team's procedure. I feel everybody shouldn't be spending 1 hour a day on doing stuff that should spend like 5 to 10 minutes on some CI server somewhere and things like that. So yeah, in the beginning, like I said, if it's you probably need some tech skill, some solid tech skill to get into a company with, and then you can decide to take on the role of ops by yourself, and then you can proceed to learn more of what you need and move on to other companies who explicitly want someone who just does ops.
All right, thank you for that. I would like to take a question for you in the chat and yeah, carry on from there. What will be your best advice for the upcoming DevOps and your kind motivation? Yeah, you've answered that basically. So the next question will be what is the best tool to learn the best practice? If you want to be a DevOps engineer, you can try
The best
to
practice in
reiterate
DevOps.
that from. Yep. Yes.
Um, I'd say that depends on the tool. So the tool and the community behind the tool usually dictates the best practices, right? For instance, you are making use of Kubernetes, right? There's already an like existing community behind it. There are people who set out who have sat down and thought about this thing and like, okay, this is probably the most maintainable or scalable way you can write your Kubernetes manifest. So depending on the tool you are using, you want to be able to identify fellow practitioners around that tool, and then it's from there on it's quite easy to identify, okay, what's the more generally accepted process behind this. So I'd say, yeah, always try to. There are people who deal with it. Um, and yeah,
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for answering our question. From my question generally and the question from the audience, I guess we don't have any other question in the chat basically. So what would be my next thing would be somebody is greeting you from the chat. So what would be my last question basically is what would be your final thoughts for us? Any motivation you want to drop for us? Yep. You can do anything, shout out to anybody, do anything you want to do for the next 30 seconds. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, like, yeah, I'd say m- for one, motivation wise, like, probably has to come from yourself. Like nowadays, a lot of people are like into tech sake but yeah, I guess whatever motivation you have, even if it's money, money is a valid motivation. If your motivation is money, stick to your guns and like make sure to pull through. And yeah, it would work out. It would work out in the end because it's not like the people doing it have like three heads. This is something that is like achievable, right? Like it's definitely achievable. So yeah. And for all my people that came to watch this very short show, I'm shouting out to them. And yeah, there's also my girlfriend. I hope she's watching.
Yeah, that's nice. I if she's there in the chat, we can you can drop a hi so that we can recognize you. Okay. So thank you so much, Director, for coming to the show and for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. And we believe next time that we'll be bringing you, we can bring you to come and do an hands-on session with us. And we believe you will be very, very well to to join us and be part of the show, basically. All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And for everybody that joined us, we really appreciate every one of us. And this show is every month, and we are going to have another edition next month. So just subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. Anytime you want to have this type of show, you get notified. We'll be making a video today or tomorrow showing us how we can get started. And I will be doing a giveaway on that video. Basically, I will be giving out a subscription of Code Cloud. Code Cloud is where to learn DevOps in a structured way, basically. So if you are interested in starting and you are convinced where to start, you can check out codecloud.com, and you can join us that day to see that kind of you can check out that video and know how you can participate in the challenge to win the subscription and learn from Code Cloud Academy. So everyone, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate you.
Thanks
And
for having me,
Direct,
Rishi.
we appreciate you for coming. And to
My pleasure.
everybody, bye bye for now. Bye.